I just can't thank enough Buddy and Evan for hosting this wonderful, what a treat. I mean, two iconic chefs of Portsmouth coming together for this event. I'll tell you, it means so much to me. So before I begin with my remarks, let's give them both a hand. Really Thank you so much. So honored. So, a lot of times when I'm out on the stump, and one of the ways, particularly early on in the campaign, that I would begin things, I'd tell people about, how I kind of got to get involved in this, and I would talk about how the fact that every night I'd go to bed and I'd say to myself, it can't possibly get any worse. This was after the election, by the way. Just to put this in some perspective.
Yeah, right.
And of course, every day it got worse. And the amazing thing is, it still gets worse. This morning I was in Manchester, WMUR. I was doing an interview with Adam Sexton, which went very well, by the way. Make sure you catch it when it's out there. But the first question he asked me, of course, is something that's on everyone's mind today. And that is, he asked me about the border. He asked me, what are your impressions of what's going on at the border? And, in some ways, it's almost impossible to express how I feel about what's happening there. It is so surreal, so horrid what is happening. And the fact that this is being done in our name. I truly can't believe that this is the United States of America. What is going on there is something you could imagine, for example, in Germany in the 30s maybe, but not the United States of America. Not the country that, from which, we have the Statue of Liberty sitting in New York Harbor. Give me your tired, your poor, your struggling masses yearning to breathe free. I mean, this is what this country is and is supposed to be about, not what's happening down there. And not only isn't what's happening there, but it reminds me, it makes me think about so much about, what this country is, what it stood for 240 years, the values that we've had. A lot of that for me comes from my own experiences. My experience, for example, with my grandfather. My grandfather was an immigrant. He came over from Italy in the first decade of the 19th century with my grandmother. My grandmother didn't speak English, never learned English, and yet she was beloved in her community of Somersworth. And my grandfather, one of the hardest working persons I've ever met in my life. He was a stonemason, I mean, it's like redundant saying hard-working stonemason, right? And these two people came over to this country to make a better life for themselves and for their children. That's why everyone has come to this country. That's what this country offers, the concept, the idea that this is a better life. And they raised 7 kids, all of whom contributed to their communities and went on and did wonderful things. And their children have gone on and done wonderful things. And as the grandson of my grandfather, I became the mayor of the town he settled in. I mean, that to me is incredible. When I was sworn in as the mayor of Somersworth, I had tears coming down my cheeks, because thinking about my grandfather and what it would mean to him that his grandson in the United States became the mayor of the town that he settled in. But it's even more, it's even closer than that today. My son, Emmett, many of you know my son, Emmett. He has taken into his home a young man who is a refugee who was granted asylum. And he spends usually 2 nights a week at our home. With Kathleen and I have him at our home two nights a week because he works at the Friendly Toast, so he spends his nights with us. And he's a wonderful young man. His story is so unbelievable. His parents were assassinated for their political beliefs. He was beaten, his leg was broken. He escaped to a neighboring country, eventually got himself to South America, and then eventually up to the United States. Turned himself in seeking asylum And ICE, you know ICE, right? Some people refer to it as the modern day Gestapo, but I'm not saying that's true, but this is what happened to this young man. This is what happened to this young man. He turns himself in seeking asylum because he cannot go back to his country because he will be killed. Now, at age 16, try to imagine that this is your life. This is your understanding of the world, that you can't go back to your country because you will die just as your parents had. So there he is. He turns himself in seeking asylum. The ICE agents forged his birth certificate. They changed his date of birth. Why? Because he was underage. And they weren't allowed to detain anybody under the age of 18. So they altered his birth certificate to reflect that he was 18 years of age so they could detain him. He spent 18 months in detention in Boston. In that interim, he taught himself English. Taught himself English on his own while in detention. He's a wonderful young man. He's very bright. Somersworth, he's now in the Somersworth school systems. My son is his surrogate parent for all of his schooling and things that he's doing. And he has enriched our lives. We are the beneficiaries. We love having him in our life. But I think what he has gone through, and then I think about those children and those mothers and fathers who have come from wherever, Honduras, Guatemala, whatever the country is, where their lives were in danger. And they come to our borders seeking asylum, not seeking to sneak in for a job or whatever, not to be just immigrants. They're seeking asylum for what is happening in their own country. Many of them under threats of death, many of them having experienced other unspeakable horrors in the course of doing this, and they have their children with them. Now, I hear the administration occasionally, I hear it talks about, well, they shouldn't bring their children, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm somewhere, my life and my family's life is in danger, so I'll just leave my kids here and just save myself. Well, no, what do? They do what every single one of us would do. They take their children to what they believe to be a safe haven. And what do they find there? They find that their children are ripped away from them. And this is not necessary. This is not the law. The levels of lies that are being told right now are, it's indescribable, but this is what we are in right now. And frankly, this is why I'm running. As I point out oftentimes, I happen to be the oldest candidate running. And some people are like, oh, well, he's an old guy, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you, it's my greatest asset. And the reason for that is this. I don't have to be doing this. I'm not running to build a political career. I'm running to make a difference. And that difference I want to make is now. And I believe in myself. I believe in my abilities. And I look at what we did in Stratford County when I was county attorney in changing a system and the way it dealt, for example, with sexual assault victims, child abuse victims. We literally transformed those systems in the way that the system itself dealt with them in terms of prosecution and investigations. I learned from that experience that you can make a difference. You can make a difference. And that's what I intend to do. You know, I am not looking to build a political career. I am looking to make a difference. And that's why I'm in this. I'm in this to make, and not only is it in terms of immigration, but it's also in many other areas. Climate change, I mean, really, come on. We were the world leaders. The world leaders. The entire world looked to the United States to lead the way in ameliorating the effects of climate change and global warming. We were the ones the world looked to. Now, no longer. We're not the world leaders. You know, now we're the world pariah. That's what we are. You know, unless your name is Kim Jong-un, okay? Or Putin, you know, or Erdogan. You know, if you're a dictator, you get our attention. If you're our allies, well, we'll insult you. This is outrageous conduct. And the thing is, We cannot let this become normal. These are not normal times. We have to stand up. We have to speak out. We have to speak often. And Congress has a constitutional duty to provide a check and balance on the executive. Well, they've abandoned that obligation completely. And so what does it give us? It gives us an administration that's unchecked and unbalanced. This, I promise you, my voice will not be silenced. I will speak up. I will speak often. I will speak loudly. Okay? 3 things I have no problem doing. And I will speak for you. Your voice will be heard. So I need your help. I thank you all for being here. What a wonderful occasion. I mean, I'm just so thrilled that all this could happen. So many people have done so much to make sure this came off, and I'm absolutely thrilled. But thank you all for coming. Please enjoy the food, and let's go out there and make some change, okay?